what we are here to talk about today is Snowpiercer, Bong Joon-ho's masterpiece.
Masterpiece, wow. Right off the bat, you're all already categorizing it into a tier.
We haven't put it on the tier list yet, so maybe I shouldn't have said masterpiece, but
Yeah, the verdict is still out. Let's after this discussion we can
Yeah.
see whether it's a
Exactly.
masterpiece or not.
But yeah, a movie I've seen before, a movie I've seen a couple times.
Okay.
This was the first time you've seen it, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
I was familiar with it beforehand, but just the premise of it.
Yeah, and I'm sure you were familiar with Bong Joon-ho beforehand, especially like you knew of Parasite. I don't know if you've seen Parasite, but I'm
Correct.
Sure
I knew of
you
Parasite.
were familiar with it.
Yeah, but didn't see it yet.
Yeah. Well, either way, what did you think of Snowpiercer? What's your overall thoughts? Your kind of Cliff Notes review?
Yeah, I was engaged pretty well from the get-go. I don't know if it had something to do with Chris Evans, because just a big fan of Chris Evans.
Yeah, fair.
So that drew me in initially. But yeah, darker one too, so it was kind of a familiar setting coming from last week's Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, it was like a very representative of microcosm of society facing the most dire circumstances and how that division takes place, that classist division, and you got the back of the train with the mongrels and the front of the train with the Richie Rich.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's interesting when the clash of those two groups takes place and seeing kind of everything up in between moving through the cars of the train. I thought that was a super cool way to tell a movie as we kind of progress through the plot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they encounter different things in each of those cars, so it's very like unique
section
setting of the movie, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell they're moving from place to place because it's very different areas laid out very differently, and
and moving from place to place with a serious purpose.
Yeah.
To kind of throw a wrench into these operations, because this has been going on for how long? When did this all start? This dispersal of CW7, the anti-global warming agent?
Yeah. Well, I guess the anniversary or whatever, or their New Year's Day happens in the movie, so that was their 18th year.
Right.
So yeah, that was, it's been 18 years since CW. I guess that would have happened a little before that. I don't know how long it took since like the dispersal of CW7 until, boarding the train and that being the last hope for humanity. But either way, yeah, I guess it's been they've been on the train for 18 years anyway.
Right. We don't get much exposition on what went on, what the world was like before the train, I guess, though.
No, I think you're kind of just supposed to expect it was the 90s as it happened in reality, or that's like you're meant to have that expectation, except with this, rapid kind of potential solution for climate change, which ultimately, doesn't work out.
But I guess in the final days, I mean, like when CW7 presumably started going wrong.
Right.
Like it's almost like I'm thinking of Walking Dead, like the initial days of the outbreak. Yeah.
Right.
This is, instead of zombies, it's the earth is cooling at a very rapid rate. I'm just trying to understand like how rapid that rate might have been, because it's, they were able to escape to somewhere, at least parts of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this train had been built ready before the world started going to shit, right? Like,
yeah, I don't know if it was built before the dispersal of CW7 or because they make reference to, it was built, or Wilford built it because he was concerned about the effects of CW7, but
right.
I don't know if that means he knew about CW7 before it was dispersed, or if he only started building this train when it was dispersed.
Well, I would say there's
when
not
it was
enough
initially
time
announced
there for that to have happened. He couldn't have worked on it and got it to what he needed it to be, especially building the tracks and stuff. Like, how would he have done that when the Earth was frozen over?
Freezing.
He would have had to have done it before, in preparation for an event like this. Like,
I guess so. You're right.
A train that's like a survival train. It's like a spaceship. They got everything they need on there to last them.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Like I said, it was a cool like microcosm of this classist system that could presumably happen in a post-apocalyptic scenario like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, it wasn't super dissimilar in terms of like power dynamics and, you know, the way people interact with each other. It wasn't super dissimilar to, you know, other apocalypse style movies or shows, like you mentioned, The Walking Dead or stuff like that. It becomes very classist and,
yeah,
you know, survival of the fittest, and it's all about power. And
but in that case,
power.
they're all kind of in the same boat in that regard. Like, at least on this train here, you kind of have
the classes.
Yeah, more of a divide. Like with Walking Dead, whenever the outbreak happens, everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah, but
with this, whoever has survived is on this train. Is this like the last of humanity?
Yeah. Yeah, everybody else is frozen away.
Yeah, okay. So, you know, people have been segmented into their groups. I was very taken early on with Tilda Swinton's Minister Mason. She was kind of creepy in the best ways.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a great character. I mean, Tilda Swinton obviously fucking crushes it in anything.
Yeah.
It's always, like, it always brings me back to Narnia. Anything I see her in, it always brings me back to the White Queen, yeah.
Damn, I'd forgotten
she's
she was
fucking terrifying, too.
She really is a chameleon, eh?
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking of her as, like, the Ancient One in the Marvel MCU. Yeah, no, she's
everywhere, yeah.
But yeah, her immediately the classist representation too with the shoe hat analogy she uses.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that, like, how did her character come off for you? Did you notice anything new about her, like, during your rewatch? I know this would have been the third time you watched it, so.
Yeah, not anything particularly new about her, I guess. I mean, exactly. I didn't feel her performance was any less than I remembered, which I think is a big thing going back to movies. Like, sometimes it's, you know, the story isn't as good as you remember it, or some aspect of it, but a lot of times it's, you know, the character, the actor isn't as good as you remember. She was just as good as I remembered it. Yeah, she stole the performance of that movie. And, like, super, just, like, she was so quirky.
Yeah, quirky is a perfect word for it.
Yeah.
Her mannerisms, too. The outfit was great for her, the big glasses.
Yeah, and the fact that it's Minister Mason was good for it,
authority.
Too. Yeah, as opposed to, like, Miss or Mrs. Mason or something like that.
Yes.
Like, the fact that it was a genderless Minister Mason, it was
Minister Mason.
Yeah.
Yeah. She definitely, you know, she was dominant too. Like, she had power, and you could tell based on her people bending the knee to her.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the shoe on the head, that shoe hat analogy.
Yeah, putting people in their place.
Yeah.
But like she said, I mean, she brings up a good point too. Like, if you look at it from her perspective, like, everybody does have their role, and the back of the train gets the shit end of the stick, but they do have their role too, and at least they're breathing too.
Yeah, as much as she's, like, morally incorrect, she's logically correct.
But they're just not throwing them a bone back there. Like, they need something to keep themselves from
it's morally
destroying each
wrong.
other.
Yeah. The Stockholm syndrome is palpable on her or something. Like, you can really feel the, like, worshipping Wilford as a god, and, like, especially when she takes out her teeth there, and
I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was
that was an uncomfortable moment a little bit too.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, she acts so devout towards Wilford that you have to wonder what her history is. Like, was she rescued maybe from the back of the train? I don't know, did Wilford pick her specifically for whatever reason? He wouldn't see her as a distraction, and he could kind of act as her mouthpiece for the other occupants of the train.
Yeah.
Making him this kind of larger than life presence that looks over the train's occupants, almost like a deity. And if Mason regards him as such, then why wouldn't the other passengers follow suit?
But yeah, it does. She has been like programmed or something, or as it seemed like you can tell that's kind of the idea with when you see the kids in that educator in the school car there. It's like they're like psychologically programming these kids to worship Wilford as a god, and like they have all these gestures and yeah,
and that's coming from the adults in that situation who seem to be following Wilford like a cult leader.
Yeah, they're just as devout as they're preaching.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, and it's a bit alarming because is it more than just we owe you our life type of thing? Like, would they be that devout, that kind of fanatic, crazy about it?
Well, it seems like it. I mean, the teacher there whips out a fucking Uzi.
Just like they're conditioning the kids,
yeah.
Are they doing some sort of mental warfare with the adults too to keep them, you know, on track?
In line.
Yeah.
On track. Nice.
I didn't even mean to do that.
Very well done.
No pun intended.
Just take credit for it. No, yeah, you're probably right.
But yeah, I'm thinking of that one teacher. She was crazy.
She was nuts, yeah.
Out of her gourd.
The food is very representative of that classist divide, right? Those cockroach protein bricks, protein blocks.
A horrifying realization that they were grinding up bugs.
Yeah, it's so fucking nasty. And especially their painter there or whatever, the guy that does all the drawings, and he looks in and sees it first, and Curtis tells him like, you can't draw that, like nobody can know about this.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the case. Nobody in the back ends up finding out what it is.
Probably a good thing, right? Yeah. It's a mercy. You're better off not knowing.
Yeah. And then of course Minister Mason knows exactly what they are and what they're made of, and is forced to eat it while the others eat sushi that's only available once a year. Or what'd you say, once or twice a year or something like that?
I think it was twice a year, maybe once a year. No, with the amount of fish they seem to have, it seemed like they could do it twice a year.
Seems fair.
It's controlled ecosystem, like they say many times, but I think they have enough to go around.
Yeah.
Tilda didn't really seem to, or Minister Mason didn't really seem to mind the bug steak either.
The bug steak was the Stardew Valley?
Yeah.
I disagree with that wholeheartedly. She was disgusted by it.
At first she was, and then she was like nibbling on it. I feel like there was a facial expression where she was like, I wonder, like it's good protein.
It probably is good protein.
But when you're used to eating sushi.
Yeah, when you got some sashimi in front of you, it's a tough sell.
What else did they got in there, food-wise?
Was there tomato plants growing in that greenhouse car? I saw some.
Maybe so, yeah. Yeah, I guess they must have like a greenhouse car. Did we see a greenhouse car?
Yeah, that's where
Yes, sorry, I'm remembering.
The guy shows Yona the dirt. Mm-hmm. What's his name? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. That scene eating the sushi, obviously, this is the first actual food they'd eaten in 18 years. Like,
yeah,
must have been pretty fucking good.
Unless someone stashed some chocolate bars or something in there.
Yeah, Wonka style.
Yeah. They found a golden ticket in there.
Yeah. What? Curtis doesn't really give a fuck about the sushi. He couldn't really care less about that. He gets more satisfaction out of seeing Tilda Swinton, Minister Mason eating the protein block than he does eating real food for himself.
Yeah. Which
is like, it's just pretty telling of everything he's been through and like how bad it really was.
He's a man on a mission.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that too. More satisfaction out of making her eat it.
Eat it. Just eat it.
Just eat it. But yeah, brings us to a good tipping off point for talking about Curtis as a character, like his arc and his motivations and how his story ended up. Him reflecting on himself at the end after the big twist, which shocked me too.
It's a pretty outrageous situation. Like, you don't really see it coming. I mean, it's completely understandable, or understandable is maybe the wrong. I don't mean morally understandable, but like, again, logically understandable. Like, oh yeah, I guess it does make sense that they were fucking eating each other. And, like we said, if there really was 1,000 people in that car at the beginning and there's only as many as we see, a couple hundred at the most, like when they're all lined up there, I guess.
Yeah, something bad happened.
Yeah, there's some shit went down. And then, yeah.
But I wasn't like, that was like, he killed that
monologue.
He killed that monologue.
That was probably the longest monologue I've ever seen that reeled me in for like every second of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're hanging on every word. You're sitting on the edge of your seat.
Be tough to get that right too. Like, how do you inhabit that, trying to picture yourself as this person who has resorted to cannibalism because of this impossible situation?
Yeah, you mean like outside of the words, just the
just
emotional response
and for Chris to have to do that. It's like, there's
a lot.
Other actors out there that have definitely had some
disturbing roles. Stellan Skarsgård.
Yeah, his dragon tattoo is a perfect example.
Yeah.
What a revelation for sure. What do you think, like, was it just purely out of he was a more able-bodied guy than some of the other people in there, so he used that to his advantage, and he was starving, and that fucks with your head, and you do some crazy shit?
Yeah, I mean, he, like, when he boarded the train, he was 17, 18 years old-ish. So, like, he would have been one of the more physically able people in the train. Like, there would have been, I'm sure, a lot of older people, a lot of kids. He would have been one of the more able-bodied people on board, or in that section anyway. So it kind of comes with that. Like, when it comes down to survival of the fittest, it gets pretty clear who's fittest pretty fast. And, if he was the guy with the knife, like, you have to wonder how many weapons there were on that train to begin with. Maybe he was the only guy with the knife.
But yeah, it does call into question, like, whether we should see him as a great guy or not. Like, how does that frame him?
Yeah, on the hero-villain scale.
Yeah.
Where does that leave him?
And what does it say about his reluctance as a leader, too? Because we see him struggle with that in the movie, too. Like, he wants to carry through this mission that him and Gillian had planned to, overthrow the whole classist system, flip it on its head. That's great, but is he kind of hiding from his past self and past trauma and who he really is? Like, he's disguising who he is with this heroic effort to let's overthrow the bad guys, kind of these corrupt, rich elites.
Yeah.
But he's really just protecting himself, or using that as sort of like a cover for, I'm struggling with being a really bad guy here because I did some really bad stuff, and will this redeem me? Is that what he's looking for?
I think that's more. It's not, malice or trying to hide anything. It's just trying to make amends for what he's done. Like, he's doesn't intend to be a leader, doesn't want to be a leader, but he's thrust into this position, and he can't just give up on it. Him not giving up on this revolution or leading this revolution is him trying to make amends for what he's done. And then we see, like, the physical representation of that at the end when he sacrifices his arm, or like when he finally gets to make that sacrifice of his arm to save Timmy.
I loved that callback line, yeah. Because he wasn't able to, or he didn't do it back then, whenever he decided to eat babies instead. And then he gets to literally put his hand in the gear there to. I did like that as a redemption moment for him, but would people have still pursued the effort with him if they knew the truth about? Never mind, actually. Because I guess they
know.
knew. Like,
they know.
Yeah.
Yeah. They know exactly. Well, I think that says more about the people in the tale and maybe about how bad it actually was, that they are going to rally behind this guy. Like, they are going to rally behind this cannibal and fucking consumer of babies because he's like their only hope. Because they understand that, like, this is the way shit is, and if this is the world we're in, then this is the guy we gotta rally behind. As long as, you know, he has the same intentions. It does, like, those kind of actions and stuff does question his ability to perform in Wilford's role and, like, take up that mantle. Because, like, if obviously he's seen the lowest of the low and he's committed acts at the lowest of the low. So how do you put someone like that in power?
Well, if you believe that he's been redeemed,
yeah,
then he's probably well suited for the role because he understands to make the system equal is probably a better option, or find some sort of balance of the scales where people don't have to resort to doing what he did to survive.
Yeah, but like Jon Snow,
the king in the north,
killed his queen. They didn't reward him with being king after that. You know what I mean? Like, you commit heinous acts maybe for the right reasons, but you still don't get rewarded for that.
Well, it seems like he did in the end. Curtis.
Rewarded with death? Or?
Well, we don't know his face.
Oh, he died? He for sure died.
Pretty ambiguous.
It was not.
The only people
ambiguous.
We see leaving the train are Yona and the kid there.
But most of the cars fell off the cliff. There's only a couple cars that were intact.
Most.
The only people residing on those cars, once they crashed, residing that were still breathing, were Yona and Timmy.
The only people out of, how many did we say there were? Around 800?
Yeah. 50? The more you say it, the less I think there actually is. But yes, Curtis obviously gets a lot of motivation in, you know, the kind of the final act from the death of Gilliam. You know, big parental figure to him. Very important. Yeah, very important mentor. But a very misunderstood, or maybe I shouldn't say misunderstood, but cryptic individual. You know, we find out at the end, or Curtis finds out, that he'd been in cahoots with Wilford the whole time, and they had been kind of coordinating with this closed ecosystem to keep it running as optimally as possible. So, you know, he's not, despite the Curtis's kind of devotion to him, he wasn't quite the guy we expected. I guess in a sense he was, but also not. Like, he did sacrifice his arm or whatever. He did cut off his arms to feed the...
Yeah, he was pretty limbless because he made sacrifices.
Yeah. But also a double agent, or maybe double agent isn't the right word, but...
Yeah, I mean, this is on the word of Wilford, who we don't necessarily ever see as a character that we can trust. He gives us no reason to trust him because, one, partly because he gets so little screen time, and two, because the rest of the movie we're told indirectly through other characters that he's, you know, framed as this maniacal kind of cult leader. Like, he's benevolent or whatever, like he... in the sense that he keeps people alive through this invention of the train, but he's not necessarily... like, it seems like there's definitely a domineering presence where even Minister Mason, like, there's a great respect there, if nothing else, of like, I tread lightly, I respect the baker of the train and our god type of thing. Like, he's revered in this great light, but everything seems a little shady about him. You know what I mean? Like I guess it's because we're looking at it from the perspective of, the revolters and the people like taking down the system type of thing. So we're kind of cheering on Curtis and his group, but I don't necessarily, even despite that, I don't necessarily trust what Wilford said, but I do understand why Gilliam would make decisions like that, to be in cahoots with Wilford, if only to keep humanity alive. I mean, there's going to be some losses in a world like this, and he understood that.
Yeah.
Literally, he understood that. He gave up his arms and his leg, an arm and a leg.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I could trust that he's telling the truth, but I still don't necessarily trust Wilford. Like, maybe he was playing with the details a little bit and being manipulative at the same time, but there could have been some collusion between Gilliam and Wilford.
Well, I don't think there definitely was. Like, they had the phones.
The phone system?
Yeah.
Yeah, linked to the... Yeah. I just mean, like, I don't know how willingly Gilliam was cooperating, like what that dynamic was like.
Right.
Wilford framed it as like, we were good buddies, go way back, and that could be true. Maybe they were like business partners or something at the time. Maybe Gilliam helped him with the train, designing it or building it, or like maybe it goes as far back as that, or maybe it's like a resistant ally sort of thing. Like both Gilliam and Wilford understood the closed ecosystem.
Yeah, the
of
reality.
It all. Well, what does that revelation mean for Curtis's character too? Like, that would have been shocking for him to hear, and like your whole world is turned upside down at that point, right? If he's your mentor and he's guided you on this path to put you where you are now, which was the end point, but he hasn't given you these critical details that are revealed to you now from Wilford. Like, how does he absorb all of that?
Yeah. Not very well, I guess. I mean, he kind of goes off on a...
He doesn't believe him, like I was saying, right? Like, initially he's denial, I guess.
Yeah, I think he doesn't believe him for like 10 seconds.
He doesn't believe him for 10 seconds, or he does?
He doesn't believe him for like 10 seconds, and then after that he puts the pieces together and he's like, oh, okay, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It makes more sense that they were communicating with each other than that they weren't, once you kind of put everything together. So yeah, it's a wonder whether Gilliam knew it was gonna happen or not. Like, it's more if Gilliam knew, he would have died, whether he did or not. It's almost something you would want to prepare Curtis for,
by telling him his death.
Yeah, by explaining, like, you have to get to the front of the train, like, you have to finish this despite me dying, because you need to take over for Wilford, like, because this whole plan is in place.
Yeah, for him to go along willingly with what Wilford tells him at the end, instead of being like, you're a fucking liar, like, this isn't my fate type of thing.
Yeah, and with him being dead, he can never get that confirmation. Like, despite, I don't think Gilliam is lying, or I don't think Wilford is lying about that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter, because Curtis still, at that point, might think he's lying about it, or is too emotional to see, kind of the reality behind it. So it is I don't know, it does make me question whether or not Gilliam knew he would be kicking the bucket. And like, it seems, if he did know that, it seems like he would have prepared Curtis for that.
It's a good point. I mean, even if he didn't think it was going to happen, he's reached an age that it's probable, or at least, like, go out as a martyr or something. Like, he'd have to be prepared for that over the years, knowing the position he's in, right? At some point, especially if, they've led revolts in the past, and he was involved in those, then there would have been some point that crossed his mind, like,
It's only a matter of time. Yeah.
I can only get lucky so many times here.
Mm.
But yeah, you're right. He could have given some information to Curtis about that, but I'm not sure. He probably kept that information to himself strategically, right? Like knowing that if he revealed that to Curtis, then he might not have pursued the revolt to the front of the train in the same way that he did, not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just say hypothetically the train didn't fall off the tracks and Curtis takes over the reins as the conductor. What happens to Wilford? Is he just like peacing after that? Or does he join the rich crew? Does he go and experience what the back of the train feels like? Does he just jump off the side of the train into the abyss?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Bullet to the brain?
I
like
guess.
It seems like
yeah.
Once he's passed the torch, what purpose does he serve anymore? Sorry, not that a human life isn't purposeful. I don't mean it like that. I just mean,
what's his role?
It seems like he would be done. Yeah, like if he doesn't have control of the train anymore, like
what does he do now?
Yeah. Where does he go?
Other than die.
This is his whole shtick.
Yeah, he probably just jumps off the side of the train or something.
I guess I just don't really understand why it needed to be Curtis specifically, or why he even needed to pass the torch. Like, I get
it had to be, I think,
a successor or
like
something.
It had to be someone who could recognize like the brutality of the situation. Like, it had to be someone who experienced the starvation and the heinous shit,
so that he could equal the scales.
Yeah, so that he was comfortable. Well, comfortable is maybe the wrong word, but that he was more able to do this to other people, like to continue to do this. Like somebody from the front section of the train finding out about the reality of how this works and how this closed ecosystem works with the tail section and the people in the back of the train. They'd be like, this is fucking despicable. Or like, hopefully they'd be a good enough person to realize, like, this is a fucking outrageous, disgusting behavior. But somebody who experienced that coming to this reality check of, like, this is the necessity of this closed ecosystem would likely have an objectively better understanding of why this is necessary and would be more willing to.
So you think it's understanding and willingness? Like, you don't think someone from the front parts of the train couldn't be capable of taking on that
they've
role?
just been living a life of luxury. They don't have any understanding or idea. They've just been ripping chronol and getting
Most
blitzed for 18 years.
Pretty hung up on that chronol.
Yeah.
But what about, like, wouldn't Curtis just be interested in, like, let's wipe out the front of the train because they've been corrupting us for the last 18 years, feeding us bugs.
Well,
let's kill these bastards. And
I think when by the time he gets
train.
to the front of the train, he understands that there's 5% of the people on this train that understand what's going on in the tail section, and the other 95% has no idea that they even exist.
So he's just going to abandon the people that he's, been living with the past 18 years that have created the man he is to be able to actually go on this journey. At the very end, he's just going to abandon these fuckers, be like, sorry, I got to keep this system in place. Like, well, you guys are stuck back there. I'm liberated now, so I'm cool, but you guys are eating bugs for the rest of your lives.
Well, no. That's what Wilford wanted, but no, that's not what he chose.
So that's what Wilford wanted. Why would he want Curtis as his successor? It doesn't make any fucking sense. If he wanted things to be the same, the status quo, and Curtis is not the guy that's going to keep it the status quo. No, I think
he thought he was. He was just wrong. Because Curtis,
why the fuck would he think that though? If he's pulling this kid that grew up in the back eating babies and bugs, why would he have any belief whatsoever that he'd be willing to keep that system in place, keep his people corrupted? It doesn't make any sense. Like, he was a terrible choice for that. Then.
But the other option is the end of the world. Like, the end of humanity. Like, it's that or extinction. The end
of humanity. It's Curtis could just balance things out, like make it like a more fair system where people aren't segregated to the back of the train to eat bugs.
The idea that
spread the bugs out, baby. Put some
the whole
bugs
idea
in the sushi.
Of Snowpiercer is that that's not possible. Like, that's all great.
But I think that's what I took away from, if Curtis was gonna be the new leader, then he would have balanced things out a little bit. Like, if things hadn't have gone awry and the train hadn't have collapsed, everybody dies except for Yona and Jimmy there. Jimmy. I was, from his character arc, I got the sense that he was gonna reject the system as the new conductor. Did you not get that same sense? Like, he was gonna willingly abide by what had gone on all these years?
Yeah, I think especially he was like getting brainwashed by Wilford at the front there. I think you're giving too much credit to this being like
I don't think someone could get brainwashed in one.
Well, his eyes were like
setting like that.
He was, I think. Oh yeah, he was absolutely getting brainwashed.
Agree to disagree.
I guess so.
I'm curious to know whether Wilford had more of a role in the creation of CW7.
Mm-hmm.
Like, was he, if he was, like we said before, if he was building that train before the dispersal of this agent, was it intentional? Is there a linkage there?
Yeah, like he knew more about CW7 than he was letting on, you mean?
Or he had a hand in creating both the train and CW7, knowing its true effects.
In tandem, yeah.
And knowing that he had created this controlled ecosystem to survive on.
Yeah, clearly is very highly technological. There must have been, he must have been adept at chemistry anyway, to some degree. If not for anything else than like keeping the people sedated in the drawers or whatever, like in the prison section. That being a bit of a tricky one to describe, but if you throw some chemistry into it.
The Matrix style, like when people are kept in those pods.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can kind of wave your hand over it.
Or Austin Powers cryogenic freezing, some sort of combination of those two.
Yeah. So he's clearly a good scientist or a good chemist, so there's nothing to say he couldn't have been involved with creating CW7, or maybe not even involved with, but maybe the sole creator of. Like, I wonder, I guess it becomes more of a question of whether or not he did create it. Say, if he did, was it for malice intent, or was it for good, or was it, for exactly what it was supposed to be, to curb the effects of climate change, and it just went overboard.
Yeah, you wonder if he's a saboteur. Because it could be out of benevolence. In the event of a crisis, we can use this train to protect what's left of humanity if it comes to that. Or it could be like, I want to try this new toy out. Let me disperse my special anti-global warming agent that I know is just going to make the Earth a frozen wasteland.
Mm-hmm.
But I've tested this train for those environments and know that it's safe.
Yeah.
Become the most powerful man.
Yeah, well, I guess that pegs him as more of like an evil genius than a genius.
I guess maybe I interpret him that way. Not necessarily an evil genius, but just this guy that wanted the power and seized it because of his presumed intelligence and his work on the creation of this revolutionary train.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the debate about him being involved in CW7 is a different story, but yeah, I don't see him as, like I was saying, I don't trust him. I don't see him as a good guy, necessarily.
Yeah. No, I think I mean, in this, contained universe, we're past the point of good guys and bad guys anymore. Like, it's all bad with.
But I mean, like, it's pretty. If he truly was involved in both things, CW7 and the train, pretty Machiavellian masterminding. Yeah. To pull like all those strings and. Yeah. You're basically like, a chokehold on humanity.
Mm.
Making yourself.
Yeah, he is the bottleneck for humanity.
Yeah, so it's just, I don't know, a guy like that, again, it's hard to tell, like, how involved he was. Because if he was only involved in the train, then, yeah, he's, I guess, more of a good guy. If he was involved in both, then I think that's pretty fair case to say that he's a manipulative bastard.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's no secret. He certainly is, but yeah, the extent of that is questionable, I guess.
I suppose, though, it's still, he's giving people safe refuge from.
Yeah, there's some good to. Well, I guess there's no good to it if he did create CW7.
Well, like, even if he knew CW7 had, this risk of hell freezing over, he's still providing safe refuge for humanity in this train. But that could be out of, like, we don't know his motivation there, whether it's
whether he thought it was going to work.
Shit, if this happens, I need people to be safe, or I want this to happen. I know that this is going to happen, and I'm going to seize power.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish they had made that maybe a bit less ambiguous. So we're not questioning it so much, especially his conversation to Curtis. If that was more like obvious whether he was trying to manipulate Curtis there or not. But it also creates this discussion about what could have been too. So in that sense, I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Don't need all the answers sometimes. Create your own.
Yeah, sometimes better to wonder.
Yeah. As a wise man once said.
Yeah. Frequently says.
I also just couldn't get over how much Wilford reminded me of Andrew Ryan from BioShock.
Would you kindly get to the front of the train?
Oh, did you get that sense at all, or is that just me?
No, yeah, 100%.
Like they both created this dystopian society where, anarchy reigns.
Mm-hmm. Well, order reigns, but anarchy overtakes order.
Well, there's order, but brewing under the surface, it's like a false sense of order.
Well,
almost,
yeah, there's
right?
order without any, like, enforcement.
It's corrupt order.
Yeah, like in Rapture, there's no, like, law enforcement or anything. It's all, like, you can do the things you want. It's capitalism in its purest form. Whatever you want to do, you can do.
Yeah.
If you have the money or the resources or whatever. Yeah, exactly. And it's the same, it's sort of the same thing in this, except there's this, like, introduction of martial law between classes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're free to do whatever the fuck they want to do, but in terms of the tail section, it's within that section, like, with each other. And then, obviously the higher class ones, and that was, like, the whole spirit of Rapture with Andrew Ryan, is, like, you can do whatever the fuck you want within your class or within your standing.
Sure.
So yeah, no, I do see what you mean. It is very there's a couple of those key differences, but yeah, it is very BioShock-esque.
Who's the Frank Fontaine of the bunch?
I guess that's Curtis. Actually.
Whoever the sushi preparer is, maybe.
Yeah, could be. The dimensions of the scenes of the settings are all over the place.
Warped compared to what an actual train car would be.
Well, and compared to each other. Like, you're telling me the school car and that aquarium car are the same size? Or, like, relatively the same size? Like, when we see the outside of the train, all the cars are the same size. Maybe give or take, like, a couple of feet or whatever. That would be imperceptible from the perspective we see the train at, but from the interior, they're completely different scale.
Yeah, it's more obvious whenever you see it, like when they're traveling from car to car, kind of. But it does, I don't know, and it does create a fun sense of confinement throughout the movie, like the sense, like regardless of whether one car is a little bit bigger than the other, there's still it's tighter shots throughout the film, right?
Yeah,
And
everything is walled in. Like there's no
to
there's
go.
no sky. Like you don't see any sky
Yeah.
or ground or tree or
And I found it
whatever.
allowed you to focus a lot more on the characters and just like the micro expressions, like the emotion that they're conveying. So I found that to be like, it helped make the movie much more of a character driven film as opposed to like the setting where, last week with Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the setting was much more poignant to create that similar sense of kind of isolation and confinement. But this was a different version of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as effective, but a different, much different take.
Just boxed in as opposed to, because they were outside a lot. Just the
blowing they were in
snow,
like they had that like
anything.
compound in Sweden. Yeah, no, much different deal.
But yeah, very visually engaging because of that.
A bit strange in layout though. Did you recognize that at all? Like the school car leads into like the spa area with all the those little pools and shit. You know what I mean? Like the kids every day going to school would go through this fucking spa.
Don't slip, don't run.
Yeah, exactly.
Wet floors.
Yeah, to get from
disaster
wherever these residential cars that they're sleeping to get to. That's cool. So it's just the layout like is completely out of whack when you look at it. Because usually it's separated by something, like a scene or something, or a transition or a cut that like you don't really notice it. But there's a couple of them that it's just like this clear,
a jarring difference.
Yeah, misunderstanding and.
Well, logistics. Same with the. I don't know if these two scenes connect, but I have in my head that like the blackout scene where they battle with the militia or whatever, and then the aquarium scene. Like those are two very distinct. Yeah. Train cars as well, distinct from the classroom and the spa as well. But I guess I chalk that up to just like that's the reality you're in now. You're in a very linear world. You just have to travel through kind of destinations to get to where you need to be. Like there's not a lot of free space, unused space in a train. Like each car has a purpose.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like you can just switch their orientation.
Yeah, it'd be cool if there was like staircase, like top cars or something, and you could like travel through one car and have a separate car for like its designated area or whatever.
Yeah. Maybe Snowpiercer 2.0, maybe.
Yeah.
For the upgrade.
Double decker. It progressively gets lighter as they move towards the front of the train. And then obviously at the end when they blow open the door and the light flows in from outside. But it's almost too, I'm thinking in my head now, like Curtis is moving towards the light. Think of it symbolically as moving towards his death, because if we assume that he's dead at the end, blows up with the rest of the train or falls off its tracks. It's almost like he's moved out of the dark, like when people move into the light when they are on the brink of death, or you hear that. It's almost symbolic of him out of the darkness, moving towards the light, and then eventually meeting his maker.
So that brings us to a close on Snowpiercer.
Yes, sir.
Last order of business is where we place this one on the tier list. So given that it was your first time watching this, what do you think? What are your thoughts? Where do you put it?
I wasn't blown away. But it provided some nice discussion, I thought, here, and some poignant moments to contemplate in terms of characters' motivations, and just some ambiguous endings for some of them. So I did like it in that regard. Like, it would be going nowhere near the bottom, but I also don't think it would be at the top. So for me, I'm going to put it snug in the middle in solid category.
Okay. Fair. I think... Alright, we might be at a bit of an impasse here then. I think I'd go outstanding. Looking at it, watching it now for the third time, it was maybe a little different than the first time I watched it. But the first 2 times I watched it in a matter of days between each other. Like, it was very quick turnaround watching the second time because it was so stuck in my head.
You had some lingering questions that you wanted to address?
Maybe, or just something I thought I missed, or maybe it was like going back to look at the foreshadowing, knowing what I did after the twist.
Yeah.
Just because that's always like the most interesting part of a big twist in any movie or show is like looking back at, oh, what did I miss that alluded to that, but I didn't realize at the time.
Little moments.
Yeah, so, the first couple of times I watched it, I was pretty blown away. So I think I'd go in outstanding. But I am more willing, considering this is the third time I've seen it, and it did hit a little less hard. Not that it wasn't great, but it did hit a little less hard this time, so I think I might be more with you in the solid category now.
Okay,
I walked myself around to, I thought it was going to be an outstanding, but no, I think I do agree with you more than I thought.
I don't really have much bad to say about it.
Yeah, no, I don't think it needs any, needs some work for what we have has been resolved to, things that there was, a glaring problem we thought, or something that was unclear to the viewer, but I don't think there was anything that was unclear that wasn't intended to be mysterious or questionable. Or
leave you pondering and theorizing.
Yeah,
that was a deliberate choice, which I appreciated for sure.
And as always, if you have any questions or concerns or thoughts, or if you disagree with us on our placement, let us know. Drop us a comment or reach out to us on X at Fratnatics or Fraternal Fanatics anywhere else.
Thanks for joining us, ladies and gentlemen.
Have a good one.
Until the next one.